Uh, Welcome back into the Couch Scouts Sports Podcast. We got a great episode for you tonight. We got a couple of at least one confirmed guest, maybe two, but we're talking the AFC North, which I texted Anthony this morning, and I was like, "All right, so what division are we doing again?" Because I was totally confused. But we are doing the AFC North. We were supposed to be doing the NFC North, but here we go. It's funny because I text one of our guests I texted to, and I was like, hey, can you come on and talk about the NFC North, thinking AFC, and he's like, yeah, but I don't know a lot about it. And then I reread it, and I'm like, oh no. But yeah, Anthony, how you doing today, man?
Good, really good, man. It's 90 degrees outside. It's
No way.
hot again. Um, I got my application for an apartment done today, so I'm moving in a couple months. So I'm excited.
Nice.
Kind of like one place. So
Moving to Reading.
no, just literally like 2 minutes down the street from where I'm staying now. So
Nice. That's awesome.
yeah, so I'm excited, especially because it's gonna be summertime. It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be cool.
Wait, did you say 90 degrees already?
Yeah, today. Let me see. Let me look right now. Right now it is 86. So yeah, it
Holy
was a high today of about 88. So yeah,
dang.
hey,
Dang. Yeah, it's like 70 here, and I just got back from. I was going for a walk, and my wife's like, "Man, what are we gonna do when it's literally 40 degrees warmer than this? 110 degrees. It is way too hot." I'm
do
like,
you
"Yeah,
guys have a pool where you staying?
yeah, we do. Thankfully."
That's it. That's what I did the one summer that I spent in Reading. I was at the pool every day before work.
Oh yeah, you have to. You have to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But thanks for those that are tuning in to this episode. Like we said, we're talking the NFC North, AFC North. Gosh, I'm gonna get that mixed up the whole episode. But if you want to help support the podcast, number one way that you can do that is follow us on any of our streaming capabilities on Twitch. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. And then listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. Leave us a rating, a review, anything. It helps us out. Helps us out personally, just getting feedback, but also helps us out, just
Yeah.
get our name out there. But so last episode, a couple days ago, we talked the AFC South. There we go. Got my ducks in
Yes.
a row. And we talked about the Texans. We talked about the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans. All right, guys, I got a confession to make. I was thinking today about Anthony. I'm like, man, Anthony's probably embarrassed because Anthony knows more about sports than any single person that I know. Like about every sport, not like I know my fair share about football, but you could literally be like, all right, who's the third ranked prospect for the Baltimore Orioles? And Anthony would most likely tell you who it is. I'm not gonna put
Doing
him up.
good right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I gotta get my stuff figured out here. But so we talked about that division, and today talking about the AFC North, and so we're talking Bengals, we're talking Cleveland Browns, we are talking the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think obviously Anthony, everyone kind of knows what happened last year in the division. For so long, it's been the Steelers division. They've run it for so many years, but last year, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens went to town, got the number two seed in the AFC, won the division, and it looks like they're the favorites. Obviously, again, made some great off-season moves, and they got some great options in the draft as well. What did you see last year in the AFC North that surprised you the most?
That surprised me the most in the AFC North. Probably just how bad the Browns were with all the talent they had. You know.
Yeah,
Uh, but I guess the most surprising. I guess that's not surprising because we see the Browns do that a lot. But I thought they would be better. But so probably Lamar Jackson. You know. Um, everybody knows the talent Lamar Jackson has, but I don't think anybody expected him to be an MVP so fast.
yeah.
So um, That was a huge surprise, especially because I mean, if you think about it, like he doesn't have that many weapons at wide receiver. I mean, Mark Andrews and then Hollywood Brown is was dealing with injuries, but when he played, he was a beast. So
Yeah,
it was just easy to see Lamar Jackson go off like that.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think we're gonna break down some stats, but when you look at the weapons that surrounded Lamar Jackson, you wouldn't say, "Oh, I bet he would have put up QB1 numbers." But when you look at his stats, it's off the charts. I mean, the number one scoring player in fantasy football.
Right.
The I mean, compared to what we saw last year when he came in, he played a little bit, and then made a debut in the playoffs. Didn't do very well, but I'm sorry, that was 2 years ago in 2018. But last year, in 2019, you know, we knew he needed to improve on the passing game, knew that he needed to improve in taking care of the ball. And overall, I mean, he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in football. And it wasn't just the running game. I mean, he threw 30 plus touchdowns, which is insane. I don't think anyone was expecting that. But for fantasy owners, for those who got him cheap and who got him late, he was a league winner. Him and Christian McCaffrey last year were the two that won the most leagues. So I'm definitely excited to see what they surround him with in 2020 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just think like I love Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is the most talented, but if you look at the weapons Mahomes has compared to the weapons Lamar Jackson has, I'm like, man, could you imagine Lamar Jackson with Tyreek Hill and
Yeah,
Kelsey with him?
yeah,
I'm like, he'd probably even be putting up even better numbers. But honestly, that's just crazy to see the numbers that he's putting up.
yeah,
It's awesome. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess let's just get started with the NFC, or sorry, the AFC North. My gosh. The AFC North, and let's just jump right into the Ravens since we're talking about them. So Lamar Jackson last year, the QB1, the fantasy football player number one, has right now an ADP of 25, and I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Him and Patrick Mahomes are literally neck and neck as far as where they get drafted. I did a mock draft last night in a super flex league, and Mahomes went with the 101, and I was the 104, and I took Lamar Jackson at the 104, and I was surprised that he went 101 before McCaffrey, but like once
Yeah.
once Mahomes went off the board, I was like, well, if I'm thinking dynasty, I want to get Lamar Jackson. I love how young he is. I love the talent that he has, the direction that the franchise is going. So I was like, I don't want it to come all the way back around to me and not get one of the top tier quarterbacks. So 3,000 yards passing, like we talked about, 66% completion, 36 touchdowns, six interceptions, and then 1,200 rushing yards. Which that in alone, I think if he was a running back, he would have finished like in the top 15. I think it was in if he was a fantasy football running back, would have finished in the top 15 just in yards alone, which is amazing. I think it was 7 rushing touchdowns as well. I didn't get that stat in there, but um, do you think that he matches that performance in 2020, or a little regression, as they say?
I think the yards will be very similar. But I don't know if he's going to throw for 36 touchdowns.
Yeah,
Again, I think the division is going to be even better. The Browns have made improvements. Again, maybe the Steelers are going to be their defense is always good. Um, but and then the Bengals, they're actually starting to build up a defense that's going to at least be decent.
right.
So I don't think I think he'll have a little regression, but he'll still be one of the top 3 or 4 fantasy quarterbacks just because he's so dynamic, he can do everything.
Yeah,
But we saw Robert Griffin do this one time too, and then all of a sudden he just went downhill. So I'm not putting that on Lamar Jackson. He's way more of an athlete than Robert Griffin, and he hasn't had any injury issues really. So,
yeah, very
um,
true.
but just with how much he runs, it still is scary. But he's so elusive that when he does go down and gets sacked, or when he gets tackled while running, he barely gets hit, or he goes down on his own because he's so quick and elusive. It's hard to really hit him hard. So
Yeah, definitely a smart quarterback. I think he's got some good people around him, just to keep him in that mentality of like, okay, we want to keep you on the field for a long time, with John Harbaugh. But I think, like we talked about in the last episode with Gardner Minshew, the whole AFC North has a entire offseason to prepare for stopping Lamar
Yes.
Jackson as well as the rest of the league, because this really was the coming out party for Lamar Jackson. You get to see like the improvements that he made in the offseason. So it will be interesting to see as teams key in and look at some of those games from 2019 where teams were able to shut him down, and see if they shift their defense around that. Um, Talk about I think for me this was actually the biggest surprise was the running back situation, because you think about a quarterback who runs so much, but then you also have a running back who is just as productive. Talk about Mark Ingram and the run game for the Ravens and what that means to their offense.
I mean, he kind of gives that Lamar Jackson has the little read and he'll run outside, get all that, and Mark Ingram just provides that power, the downhill runner in the middle, to kind of open things up for the pass game. When Mark Ingram is being successful and just hitting, the middle and hitting those gaps, it just opens up more for Mark Andrews in that pass game, where you got the linebackers and safeties are like, we have to press up because Mark Ingram's having a good day, and then boom, you just flip it over. Or vice versa, when Lamar Jackson is going off with his arm, they start to worry about Lamar throwing and running. And
Yeah,
Mark Ingram just has so much opening.
right.
Mark Ingram, he's such a good year, man. It seems like every year of his career, he just keeps getting better, which is great because I love it. He's such a talented back, and he loves Lamar Jackson. He loves his team. He's a great teammate. Um, him in the eighth round is really good value.
Yeah,
You know,
I agree.
of running back 11, I would honestly, I venture to see his numbers be very similar. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna have 10, 15 total touchdowns a game.
Yeah,
That's the key for him. But
yeah,
the yardage is gonna be there. 5 yards a carry. The only thing is, I would expect maybe his touchdowns might come back just a little bit,
yeah,
but they also might go up because, like we said, Lamar. I feel like Lamar might regress a little, so they might have to rely on Mark Ingram a little bit more as well. But also Justice Hill, I feel like his second year he's going to be a great, great player. So I feel like Mark Ingram might lose some touches to Justice Hill. So
yeah.
and Justin Edwards.
Yeah, it seems when you look at the numbers, they did a pretty good job of splitting the carries between at least Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards. And I know when Justice Hill got drafted last year, it looked like he was going to be that change of pace back, the receiving back, third down back, but he never really found his role in the Ravens offense. But I know that they want to do that, so he's going to have a bigger role in the offense this year. I don't know if it. I don't suspect that it means a lesser role for Mark Ingram. I think if anything, it takes carries away from Gus Edwards. But either way, I mean, you look at Ingram. He really only had 202 carries, but still put up 1,000 yards and the 15 touchdowns. I mean, on 26 receptions, that means he's averaging a receiving touchdown almost every 5 of his receptions, which is amazing. And because he hasn't been known for that throughout his career, he's been a good receiver, but he's been more so the goal line back, the power back. So I agree with you. I don't know if we'll see the same touchdown percentage, but as long as the Ravens don't add a running back, which they potentially could in the draft, I think that Ingram's a great value in the eighth round as maybe your third or fourth running back coming off the board for your team. Just because, I mean, he is getting up there in age, but you look at the production, you can't really argue with the running back 11 in the eighth round. So I agree with everything that you said there. So I just mentioned this, but a potential rookie landing spot for a running back. I've seen a couple of reports that the Ravens are thinking about drafting a running back. I wouldn't imagine. I can't imagine it'd be any of the top 3 running backs. I think it would be a late second, late third round pick. And I guess more so just for the aging Mark Ingram. But do you think that's a move that you would like to see them make, or maybe more so focus in another area of the offense?
I'd rather see them go at wide receiver, to be honest.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be mad to see them grab 2 wide receivers,
yeah,
one of the top ones, and then the depth. There's so much depth at wide receiver. Marquise Brown is going to be good. If they just need to keep him healthy and let him get his thing, but he's too. I hate to say this, but he's too small to be your legit number one.
Right.
So like he can be your number one, but you're going to need some other bigger receivers. Like a T Higgins, maybe a CeeDee Lamb. One
Yeah.
of those guys I would love. I want it unless they really just don't believe in Justice Hill after 1 year. I feel like I would just roll with him for now.
Yeah.
I feel like Justice Hill has a bright future and can take over when Mark Ingram is done. So I would hate to see them waste a pick when they should get wide receivers. Because they're in win now mode, and if they can go get an elite receiver right now, that's going to help Lamar Jackson out big time.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that as well. I really am curious to see Justice Hill get on the field and get more touches. He started kind of finding a little bit of a role towards the end of the season. So I agree. I think at the wide receiver spot, when you look at, I guess we can jump into the wide receivers, but you have their number one wide receiver was the wide receiver 46, and then it goes straight downhill from wide receiver 74 and Willie Snead, who's not even being taken in dynasty leagues, and then Miles Boykin, who was supposed to be, they drafted him last year as well, was supposed to be the wide receiver 2, but some injury issues and just kind of never found his way into the offense. So you definitely, I think for the Ravens, in order to say, like, yes, they are contenders with the Chiefs, like, I think that they have to have a wide receiver in the top, at least in the top 30. They have a great weapon in Lamar Jackson, but you still want to have that reliable deep ball threat, or even just something underneath that they can rely upon. And like you said, Marquise Brown, definitely a wide receiver 2 in an offense. He's not the focal point. He's more of that get the ball in his hands and let him create something rather than the dependable go-to guy.
He's more of a Deshaun Jackson type.
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson and his speed, when you have a legit number one on the other side of Deshaun Jackson is difficult. You can't guard him. Deshaun Jackson's best years were, when with the Eagles, when they had him as their number 2, with Jeremy Maclin and guys like that. So if you can get somebody, go get Marquise Brown's teammate, man. I feel like that's the perfect fit.
Yeah.
I feel like CeeDee Lamb's a perfect fit for everybody, but that's because that's how good he is. I watched him at Oklahoma for 3 years. He's just that good. I love CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah. So we don't really have to talk about Snead. I don't think that I think he's around. Again, I know they picked up his option, but any thoughts on Boykin making a jump in year 2? Kind of found a year to get his feet wet. Do you think that he steps up into a role, maybe a wide receiver 3?
Yeah, I think he'll jump Willie Snead. If you look at it, 3 touchdowns and only 13 catches. So that's good production. If we can get that up to about 50 catches,
yeah,
like 7 or 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's a matter of. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying the potential of Miles Boykin is there.
Yeah.
But I think he could sneak into. He'll sneak right behind Marquise Brown if they don't take another.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
If they stay with how they are right now.
Yeah, I think he appeared in a good number of games, but I think it was just a matter of finding sets and finding him snaps. Like the Ravens had 3 tight ends. They run a lot of 2-3 tight end sets. A lot of different pistol sets with Lamar Jackson and Ingram, so it kind of limits you to the usage at the wide receiver position. But I think with another year under Jackson's belt to develop as a passer, they're going to be able to throw more formations in there that are more acclimated to like a 3 receiver set, and you'll be able to see him spread the ball around a little bit more. All right, so let's finish up the Baltimore Ravens with Mark Andrews, who was the tight end 5. Quickly becoming one of the best fantasy football tight ends. Surprisingly, he was actually the 2nd tight end taken by the Ravens in the same draft year, and they traded away Hayden Hurst to the Falcons. What'd you say?
Did we both just get that notification?
Yeah. I don't know what that was. But, okay, so Mark Andrews from Oklahoma, tight end 5. tight end 5 last year, another great tight end. ADP of 53.67, fifth round. So if you look, at some point we'll compare the tight end rankings, and you'll see the difference between a Travis Kelce, a George Kittle, and Mark Andrews. But when you look at his production last year, 64 receptions, 852 yards, and 10 touchdowns. That's great value at the tight end position, especially if you're waiting until the fifth round to get him. I'm more than happy to pass on the Kittles, on the Kelces, on the Ertz, to get a tight end who's going to put up fairly similar numbers. Maybe not the big weeks, but it's been known from the second that he got to the Ravens that he is the favorite in the passing game, especially with Lamar Jackson. He's a great pass-catching tight end, and I think anytime you see a tight end that's up in that upper tier of like 60 receptions, getting close to 70 receptions, I wouldn't be surprised to see him hit 70 in 2020. Those are the tight ends that you want to target, because you just know that they're getting the looks from the quarterback very often.
No, 100%. 100%. There's not really much more to say on Mark Andrews. He's an absolute stud. And I think he will do even better than tight end here.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
If you can get him in the fifth round, it's great
Yeah.
value.
Okay, so next let's talk about the AFC North Pittsburgh Steelers. So obviously last year was a mess for them. Their defense and actually ended up being one of the best in the leagues, but I remember their first couple games was just insanely terrible. But let's start at the quarterback position. So Ben Roethlisberger missed 14 of the 16 games. They had a couple different quarterbacks that came in. You obviously had the blow-up fight with the Browns and the Steelers and Myles Garrett. I'm hoping that we don't have to see any of those quarterbacks play in 2020. I'm hoping that we can see Big Ben at least for one more full year. But what have you heard anything about how he's doing in his rehab, and what do you expect coming back for this offense? Because you could really tell that they were struggling in 2019. What does he mean for this offense?
It means everything. It means everything, you know. I don't. He's definitely not the Ben of old, but I mean, he can still, you know, throw that 300 yards a game, a couple touchdowns, and keep you in a ball game.
Yeah.
So he's definitely going to help that offense huge. It's going to help big time, and the person that's going to help the most, if you look down at wide receiver, is Juju. You know, him and Juju, they have such a good connection. You know, you can tell, like, Juju and Ben, they stuck up for each other through everything, all the Antonio Brown stuff. It seems like they're like best friends, which is great. So I'm super excited to see Ben back. The Steelers could have won so many games last year if it wasn't for Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
And so I fully expect the Steelers to be back to normal, see them back in contention with the Ravens and potentially the Browns.
Yep.
That division, you know, this division's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to win. So, I mean, he's got an amazing beard going right now. I don't know if
Oh my
you've seen
gosh.
it. Beard.
Looks like a caveman.
Lumberjack out here. Yeah, it's weird. But, yeah, I'm excited. I love watching Ben Roethlisberger play. It's just another legend, dude. Like, I'm so happy that we've grown up to watch these quarterbacks. You know, it was Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, and then Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, all these guys, like, man, so many of them. And even Aaron Rodgers now, you know, they're just, as they're getting older, I'm like, I want to see them play as much as I can.
Right.
And it sucked seeing Ben be out. Like, I don't care for the Steelers at all, but it sucked not seeing Ben Roethlisberger play quarterback.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
To see him back.
Yeah, I agree. It's gonna be sad, like in the next couple of years, seeing a lot of these quarterbacks retire: the Brees, the Bradys, Roethlisberger, Rodgers, Phillip Rivers. But I agree. I think he means everything to this offense just from a leadership perspective, and they have great weapons. It's just a matter of having a quarterback to command that offense and use them well. So let's talk about the running back situation. So this actually is kind of a question of, I wouldn't say controversy, but it seems like the Steelers came out and said that because James Conner is playing in a contract year, they're most likely going to go out and get a running back. Um, he had the big year a couple years ago and dealt with some injuries last year. This year, only appeared in 10 games. He was the running back 35, but only 116 carries for 464 yards and 4 touchdowns. Do you? He's obviously going to be the starting running back for the Steelers, but do you? If you're the Steelers, if you're the GM, do you? They don't have a pick until the second round. Do you use that second round pick on a running back, or do you go offense, or you go on the defensive side?
I think just the way these offenses are set up in the AFC North, they're kind of turning into some high-powered offenses. Even Eagles are going to get Burrow, and they have weapons like. So I'd probably see them maybe go one more secondary player,
Yeah.
or maybe a pass rusher. But James Conner. It's a surprise now that Le'Veon Bell is completely out of the mix. That James Conner had this regression, and I
Right.
know he dealt with injuries, obviously. Um, I'm going to be honest. I'm thankful that he dealt with some injuries because I had Jalen Samuels
Yeah.
help me get a couple wins because this dude had like 10 catches in a game.
That's right.
But but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing them grab a running back if one of the good ones are available in the second round. If like Andre Swift or Jonathan Taylor is still there, then absolutely.
Yeah.
But if not, just keep pushing for one more year. If all else fails, maybe Connor is struggling with injuries. You go grab a Devontae Freeman off free agency
That's true.
or something like that. So
Yeah.
and even Benny Snell. I mean, I feel like he definitely didn't have the greatest, in the 13 games, but he's definitely a talented back. They have some talent there. They just maybe the Mason Rudolph, the Ben Roethlisberger factor is going to be huge for that run game.
Exactly.
Everybody knew Mason Rudolph wasn't going to throw on him, so
Right.
it was easy to stop the run and focus on the run.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Give James Conner another year. I think he'll have a bounce back year, really good year.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other running backs, like Anthony mentioned, Jalen Samuels and Benny Snell, both, I would say, two running backs that you want to own if you are in a PPR league. Definitely Jalen Samuels because he at this point is going to handle a lot of that third down work. James Conner, when he is in, does get a lot of work in the pass game as well, but they definitely like Samuels as well. And then Benny Snell, I'm not sure if you're in a redraft league. I don't know if I would. Go ahead and get him. You might be able to find him on waivers mid-season if there's an injury, but definitely in the Dynasty League, a running back that they drafted last year and got some action this year with the injuries as well. And you really never know with it when Roethlisberger comes back just how the offense responds, and it could open up more opportunities for all three of these running backs. But I think we can both agree, Anthony, that the number one player that will be positively affected by the return of Roethlisberger is Juju Smith-Schuster, because last year, I mean, I just felt so bad for him, like AB leaving, and you know that Juju's capable of having that wide receiver one type season, but then Roethlisberger goes down in game 2, and it was just kind of downhill. It was like this strain for Smith-Schuster, who has all his talent but just had no quarterback to actually get him the ball. So I'm definitely excited for what he does in 2020. Last year still finished top 70 in wide receivers, and I mean still being drafted 14th overall in the second round. So it's if he falls to me in the second round, I'm still taking him just given his age and his production, what he's done the last 2 years. But anything that you want to add on there?
No, I love Juju. He's one of my favorite just people in the game. He's a great player, great attitude, just a good person overall. He's definitely going to be way better than wide receiver 65, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He'll probably be top 15, maybe top 10.
Yeah.
Because he has that talent and that ability. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like the news on Smith-Schuster right now isn't necessarily positive. Like just in a lot of the Steelers have been saying that they are thinking about moving on from him, like they're okay letting him walk, which I don't actually think that they are, because when you have a a receiver who has literally come in and become the face of the franchise. You know, he's always engaging with fans and the community, and he loves being a Steeler. Like, these are the type of players that you don't just let walk. So I don't know where these reports are coming from, or why, but I he's gonna bounce back. He's gonna be a top 10 receiver, no doubt. And I think that solidifies for the Steelers. Like, yes, he's worth paying the money next year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably just a coy, like a decoy trying to get him to take a cheaper contract to stay in Pittsburgh. Like, hey, we really don't need you or want you. We'll move on from you, but we'll offer you this.
Yeah.
That might be what that is, but
Yeah.
that's stupid. They wouldn't, even with all the troubles AB gave them, they wanted to move on from AB so fast if they weren't going to keep Juju as their future. So.
Right. I know this is a guy that you really like, is Deontay Johnson, who had a great season last year. Just came in with some opportunity and really gave life to the offense. Finished as the wide receiver 39 with 59 receptions, 680 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So led the Steelers in touchdowns, and right now you can get him in the 8th round. He's definitely climbing up people's draft boards. But do you think that he improves from a season ago and kind of keeps that wide receiver 2 role alongside Smith-Schuster, or is that about what you would expect in year 2 with him?
Yeah, I'd probably see similar numbers. Maybe the yards go up and maybe a couple more touchdowns just because it's Ben and not Mason Rudolph.
Right.
Um, but I mean, he came on and looked like a stud. He provides a lot. He's a great route runner, and he gets open. He's a tough cover, so
Yeah.
I would expect his numbers to be very similar. But like I said, maybe an increase in each category as well, just because we know with Ben, he's a gunslinger. He likes to throw it, so they're going to throw the ball a little bit more as well. So I think wide receiver 39, I'd see him going up. Maybe low 30s. Around that area. So he'll be a solid, wide receiver 3 or a flex for you, whatever,
Yeah.
depending on the league you're in. But yeah, I like him a lot, and especially if what you said with Juju, about them talking about Juju, maybe they like Deontay so much that they want him to be their number 1 and feature soon as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, definitely worth buying in his stock right now. I would say, while it's still relatively cheap as an 8th round pick. And then I guess another receiver to touch on as well was James Washington, who, put up solid numbers as well. I mean, you can tell when you look at these 3 receivers, you can tell that Smith-Schuster had a down year because of the numbers that Johnson and Washington put up. But 45 receptions, 735 yards, 3 touchdowns. He averaged 16.7 yards per catch, which is great. So none of these receivers are slouches, obviously, with Smith-Schuster, but I think each plays a great role in the offense, and it could be a really great offensive attack come 2020 this year. Just having all 3 receivers healthy, and like I said, James Washington's a great deep ball threat. Deontay Johnson is a great route runner, and Smith-Schuster is just a great overall wide receiver. So I think that you can go with any of the 3 receivers in your leagues moving forward. So let's talk about the tight end situation. Anthony's got to jump and take care of something real quick. But the big splash for the Steelers in the offseason was Eric Ebron. He finished as the tight end 27 last year, and was definitely inefficient in the Colts offense after the year prior. I think he had finished in the top 15 or top 10 among tight ends. Anthony is back with us. But his ADP at 229 as a 20th round pick. I mean, it's not going to be the 20th round anymore after he got signed by the Steelers, but definitely you can still get him for cheap, just because his history has been up and down. And I felt like at some point we had talked earlier about Ebron's. If you look at his career numbers, it goes like he has a really big year and then a down year, a really big year, a down year, and so last year was a down year. So I think that he's poised for a breakout season with the Steelers, and it doesn't appear that Vance McDonald is going to be the guy anymore. It seems like this is just another offensive weapon for the Steelers. Any thoughts on Ebron or McDonald, Bills?
No, I like Ebron a lot better. He's just he's just a physical freak, and Roethlisberger loves to go to the tight end, so
Yeah,
he should have a typical Ebron year, a typical good Ebron year.
yeah. Excellent. All right, so you want to go? We got the Bengals and the Browns next.
Yeah, yeah, let's go for it.
Do you have a preference on which one we go with?
No, either one. I don't care.
Okay.
If your Browns guys ready, that's great. If not, we can go to the Bengals right now.
Okay. Yeah, let's go. Let's go Bengals, and I'll text him and get him set up.
Perfect.
So I just put Joe Burrow in here because I assume that he's going to be the number one overall pick. I was actually surprised Andy Dalton isn't even being drafted in dynasty leagues right now. I couldn't find it, and there wasn't any ADP data on him for March, and I think that's just basically because people have written him off. He's not going to be the quarterback of the Bengals. I still think he's worth drafting because I think he's going to get picked up and find a job somewhere. But I know you really like Joe Burrow, Anthony. What could he mean for this franchise, who has not had a top tier quarterback in a long time?
I don't know. What he could mean is, I mean, he could mean like something like Eli Manning did for the Giants, something like Philip Rivers did for the Chargers. You know, something like that. He has the potential to turn the franchise around and make them relevant in the AFC North, and get to the playoffs and win games. Not immediately. It's going to take some time because that team is way down right now.
Yeah.
They have some weapons. Definitely, they have a legit running back, a really good backup running back, some legit wide receivers. That offensive line is just going to need some work because the AFC North, man, you're talking about defensive, the front sevens of the Browns, the front seven of the Ravens, the Steelers.
Steelers, yeah.
Get destroyed, man. It's like, I mean, he's used to it playing in the SEC, but the LSU had such an elite offensive line and such an elite offense that he just got rid of it so quick. So, I mean, I think Burrow would thrive, and I mean, if he is drafted number one overall like we expect, I think he'll probably win Rookie of the Year as well. So, I mean, I would go, I'd go all in on him as my dynasty quarterback. I have Jared Goff right now on my dynasty team. I would take Joe Burrow over Jared Goff right now.
Right.
Just for the future, because I think Burrow literally has that talent in him. And I mean, we saw it. He just put up literally the best season anybody ever has or probably ever will in college football history. It was nuts what he was doing. So I love Joe Burrow, and honestly, I hate to see him going to the Bengals, but I know I have a lot of friends that are Bengals fans, so I'm like, all right, good for you. Just because I don't want to see his career get potentially ruined in a couple years because he's hurt or he just has no help.
Right.
He can handle it though.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited for the Bengals. I'm actually working on an article about him right now, just like what the Bengals have had as a quarterback for the last 10 years, and then what he could actually become in this offense immediately in 2020, just because he does have some great weapons and they have some options in the draft that they can do to just solidify an offense and build something around him. But yeah, you're right that the 6-game stretch in the AFC North is going to be really, really tough. But we'll see how it goes. Joe Mixon, let's move on to running back. Joe Mixon was the running back 13 in 2019. He's still a first-round pick, which a little bit surprising, but also when you look at just what the Bengals were last year, he still was able to put up over 1,100 yards, 278 attempts, so he's still getting the ball a lot, and involved in the passing game as well, 35 receptions, and had 5 touchdowns on the ground as well. So I'm actually expecting for an increase for him in 2020, just with a better quarterback and more offensive weapons. But I would mostly say it's going to be in the touchdown department. I think 3 touchdowns receiving is great. I think in the run game, I think 5 is a little bit too low. So I'd like to see him somewhere up in the 8 8 to 9 touchdown range, if not higher. But I think his floor has definitely increased heading into 2020, just with um, they have a much better offensive line heading into this year than they had last year. Are you a Mixon fan or nah?
Um, yeah, I am. Just because he seems to love Cincinnati and they love him.
Yeah,
And that's tough. That's a tough sell. Cincinnati Bengals. There's not a lot of players that actually love being there and staying there. But AJ Green, Joe Mixon. So with you, if you expect him to have a better year than he did last year, would you take him at that ADP if you know the first round top 10?
say that one more time. If I
If you said you expect him to have a better year,
yeah
touchdown wise.
yeah
So
oh
would
yeah.
that maybe force your hand to take him in that first round ADP, or do you want to maybe take him later?
Looking at his ADP of it's 9.67. So you most likely, I mean, I was if you're the ninth pick, you can grab him. If you're the 10th, um, you have you're most likely probably not going to get him at the turn at like the 204. So I think if the top 4 or 5 running backs have already gone in the first round, I think I'm going to take Joe Mixon just because I know if I don't take him in the first round, he's not going to be there in the turn in the second round. Um, and if I don't take a running back in those first 2 picks, um, you're going to be in trouble. And there's a big drop off from when you talk about Mixon, Zeke, Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Kamara, like the top Saquon, the top 5 or 6. There's a pretty big drop off from those 6 or 7 running backs heading into the second round. So obviously you got the rookie running backs coming up in there as well. But if I can get him at the ninth pick, I'll go for it.
One more question. So when we did the NFC South, do you remember what Todd Gurley's ADP is? I'm trying to think. It's
Um,
just right.
I believe I think it's like third or fourth round.
Okay, so let me ask you this: for this coming year, would you rather have like you could potentially get, let's say, Devonte Adams maybe at 9 if he does fall there.
Yeah,
Usually Devonte Adams, and then maybe on the flip later on you get Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley or one of those guys rather than Joe Mixon at 9. Would you rather do that? I don't believe in Joe Mixon that much to
yeah,
take him in that first round if I don't have to. That's what. So I'm just trying to figure out for
yeah.
myself as well because
That's a good question. I think
you know
if it was a redraft league, I'm more comfortable waiting on the running backs.
for sure.
Just because I know I'm going to get some decent production. Like I wouldn't mind having Gurley and Gordon and having a Devonte Adams, but I think in terms of dynasty, if you look at the first couple years of Mixon's career, I mean, despite being on the Cincinnati Bengals, he's proven to be one of the top
Yeah.
top running backs every single year, and he does it on the ground. He can do it, 35 receptions. That's great in PPR leagues. So, I think if I'm thinking long term, I would much rather invest in Mixon versus a 26-year-old Todd Gurley and a 26-year-old Melvin Gordon. Gordon, just because he's potentially paired with Philip Lindsay, who they love in Denver, and then just Gurley with the question mark. So I'd rather go with a back in a supposedly rising offense who has done it for the last couple of years in the same offense, and it's just getting better. So I feel like his situation is getting better, but definitely in redraft, I'd be more comfortable passing on him early and then going to get a different running back.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so then just one other running back to touch on for the Bengals is Giovanni Bernard. I feel like this guy has literally been with the Bengals for so long, and every year we talk about him, and he's a great fantasy football pickup. He's going to get a lot more touches. If someone goes down, he's the next man up. But I feel like every single time that someone does go down, I mean, Joe Mixon was struggling early on in the season. I think he got benched at one point for a game, but Bernard really, I didn't even put his touches in because there wasn't a whole lot. But for a 20th round pick, he's a great PPR candidate. I think he had a pretty poor year last year, 30 receptions, 0 touchdowns, for a guy who's usually heavily involved in the offense. So I have him labeled as a bounce back candidate. Definitely in dynasty leagues, if you're in a startup, there's no problem drafting him with some of your last few picks, and even in redraft leagues, look for him in the waiver wires, like in the first 3 weeks, because he's almost always there throughout his career. But other than that, I think Mixon is definitely the clear number one back in this offense.
Yeah, for sure.
And so Burrow is most likely going to get some good weapons to pair himself up with. He's got Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, hopefully sees the field in 2019, John Ross and Auden Tate. So all these guys I would say, are improving, other than AJ Green, who's getting old. I think he's 31, turning 32. But who of these four names do you really like, Anthony, and what do you think they do in 2020?
Who I really like is Tyler Boyd, but I'm going to go out and say somebody that I really want to target, just because if you look at the value, is Auden Tate.
Yeah.
He really stepped up last year. Only one touchdown, I know, but I mean, he just seemed to really find himself in that Bengals offense. And the one thing, like I mentioned this on one of our past episodes, the thing with Joe Burrow is, I mean, it didn't matter on LSU, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Thaddeus Moss, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like, everybody got the ball. But Burrow is going to spread the ball around. And I feel like Tyler Boyd, people know. Now, he's a legit contender to be a wide receiver 1, a wide receiver 2. But he had 90 catches and 1,000 yards last year.
Yeah.
We got that for him. AJ Green is going to be back, and he's still going to be a beast. He might not be the same as always, but he's still going to be a beast. John Ross he's just fast. He hasn't really shown anything other than speed and catching deep balls yet.
Right.
So I expect Auden Tate's going to have a lot of chances to have one-on-one single coverage, whether it's a nickel or a safety or a linebacker, even sometimes trying to guard him. And I feel like he's just going to chances with Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
So I really like Auden Tate. I like Auden Tate more than John Ross.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with you there too. I mean, when you look at the difference in the value, the 12th round versus the 17th round, Auden Tate was a second-year player last year. I believe he went to school in Florida State. Just a really freak of a receiver, just tall, and just kind of one of those big guys, not super athletic, but has great hands. And I think he ended the season on the IR, had an unfortunate injury when he was really starting to gain some traction. But yeah, I agree. This actually, when you look at the names, depending on how AJ Green looks at the start of 2020, it's actually a really nice receiving core for Joe Burrow to get started with. You talk about a veteran like AJ Green. He's been one of the best in fantasy football for quite a long time, and the last couple of years have declined. But hopefully, you give a guy like this a year off to get fully healthy. You never know like what kind of season he puts up. So Tyler Boyd, I love. He's a 90 reception receiver. I'm going to say he's in between 80 and 90 this year. I would be surprised to see him hit 90 again, just with the health of the other three receivers all most likely being available as well. But yeah, I agree. I would say Boyd, Green, and Tate. I really like to have big years and a big year in 2020. So the tight end position, CJ Uzoma, is a pretty cheap value. Didn't do a whole lot in 2019. Basically, that's how we feel about him. So let's just talk about a potential tight end that you could see. I mean, we talked about in the last episode, Thaddeus Moss. If the Bengals went and paired him up with Joe Burrow coming in, I'd really like to see the tight end out of Cincinnati.
Or
Florida Atlantic. But also, who's it? Albert O. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but the guy who ran, I think it was like a 4.44 or a 4.5 in the combine. Did you see him?
Yeah, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name.
Yeah, but he's a tight end from Missouri, and I think he would just be a great fit in the offense, giving them kind of that like Evan Ingram speed from the tight end position, a guy that they can use in a versatile way. But is there any specific tight ends that you're like this would be a great fit for the Bengals?
Yeah, I just like Travis Moss just because him and Joe Burrow are already like this. So that's just the obvious answer for me. But yeah, definitely that guy, that guy from Missouri. I
That
don't know his
guy, Alberto.
Alberto. Yeah. Either way, because tight ends are huge. Obviously, we talk about it all the time. Tight ends are big in this game, man. You gotta have one.
Yeah,
So if the Bengals can snag one of them,
snack on one.
great. But I wouldn't be surprised if they just roll with Uzuma one more year,
Yeah,
and then maybe draft a tight end later on in
yeah.
the draft, and just see if they become anything. But
Yeah, because I mean, really none of the tight ends are going to go super early. I don't think any. I mean, tight end is a needed position in the NFL right now, but there's none that are like this is going to be the clear tight end one. Like there's not a Mark Andrews of this draft. I would say like that just balled out in the combine. I think there's good talent, but I don't think there's one that you're like, oh, he will definitely be better than all the others. I don't know if you feel differently.
no, I think if there is one, I just think it's Harrison Bryant from Florida Atlantic. Just
Yeah,
'cause dude's a stud. He had a big game against Ohio State when nobody else in Florida Atlantic did. He had a big game, and
yeah.
I'm telling you, dude, if you were I guess it didn't work for Corey Davis, so never mind. I'll just stop right there. If you have a big game against Ohio State when you're a nobody on a nobody team, I'm telling you, you automatically become on a radar,
Dang.
and he's a stud.
Watch out for KJ Hamler then.
Nah, that dude hasn't. No. He still took L's every year.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Cleveland Browns. We got a guest about to hop on, and I'm gonna try and bring him in this chat and see how this works. Oh, I might have just.
R.I.P. J. Burrow.
What?
Comment from Josh.
Oh, is he commenting? We got any questions?
Oh, he just commented R.I.P. J. Burrow.
All right. Let me get your video up here, Justin, for the viewers.
All right, I can hear you guys now.
All right, give me just 1 second. All right, there we go. We got triple or double Noah here. Let me take my video off. All right, so Justin Kollar, welcome to the Couch Scout Sports Podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
So Anthony, I didn't get to introduce you because we had technical difficulties, but Justin Kollar, a great college friend of mine, and Anthony Bills, a good California friend.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, sir. You too. I love the commitment.
Podcast and your Instagram posts from afar. I really was following you guys most for all the free agency buzz on Instagram.
Hey, there we go.
So that's pretty cool. I love you guys' graphics and the way you guys are running everything so far. So I'm happy to be here.
Let's go.
This guy. Follow this guy.
No, I just got done telling Anthony, I'm like, man, you know way more about sports than me. I just know some fantasy football stuff. That's about it.
Yeah.
So you are the last, but definitely not least of the AFC North, and we want to bring you in to kind of wrap up the AFC North.
Yeah,
and so we talked to the Ravens, we talked the Steelers, the Squealers as you called them today, and the Cincinnati Bengals. But talk about what you see from the Browns last year, maybe a disappointing year, and then we'll kind of break down the quarterback situation all the way down through the tight end situation. But yeah, so start us with last year's kind of the hope and expectation.
Around this same time last year, every Browns fan was just completely obsessed with the OBJ announcement. He was coming to Cleveland, and there was so much hype and so much buildup coming into training camp and the draft. But I will say last year's draft was exciting as a Browns fan because finally we didn't have to worry about which quarterback we're going to pick. Right? Everyone was still pretty high on the Baker Mayfield wagon. But I will say this: I think the team, I mean, it was like buying a brand new sports car without having any insurance, right? You want to take it on the highway, but you really can't. All of these pieces that we brought in last year, none of them had played together. You got some big attitudes on the team.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was always kind of concerned, like, how are these players going to gel? And I just want to say, I was never a big fan of big old Coach Freddie I just thought the situation, as to everything that he was getting thrown into, that he was going to be unprepared. And I mean, that happened to be the case. First game of the season against the Tennessee Titans, very winnable game. I mean, Tennessee ended up having a fantastic season,
Right.
so you can't take that away from them. But on paper, week 1, you think the Browns, the Titans are somewhere down here. You really think that's going to be a winnable game?
Yeah.
The Browns with the most penalties. I think, I mean, it was some yearly record. Like, it was obscene. Watching that game, I was like, if this is the way the whole season is going to be, like, literally count me out. And that, to me, just came from poor coaching. So I'll say this now, and I don't want to get, too many horses in front of the wagons here, but you see John Dorsey leave, you see the new GM come in. You see Freddie Kitchens leave, you see now we have Kevin Stefanski. Again, he's a rookie coach, but I think you're seeing a little bit more of a continual, like, the GM and the coach seem to be in agreement. The first thing that Stefanski says when he comes into that press conference is Baker Mayfield is our quarterback moving forward. And you think, new regime again, right? Every couple of years this happens in Cleveland. And you're wondering, are they going to want to stick with Baker? Because that was Dorsey's guy. That was Freddie's guy. Are they going to stay with Baker? And I think the moves that we've seen the Browns take this offseason so far, it really setting up well for Baker Mayfield. So I think, I mean, he had I won't say terrible, but he had a very disappointing season last year. He would literally get back in his drop, look at one receiver and just force something, all the free agency signings that they had, and I think the 3 that really stick out to me the most, that give him the most options, are the new right tackle Jack Conklin from Tennessee, we were just talking about, the fullback Andy Janovich from the Broncos. And again, I like this signing particularly well because of what Stefanski said in his introductory press conference. I mean, we get so much like pomp and circumstance and people saying stuff they don't really mean these days, especially with these head coaches. We're going to go to the Super Bowl. We're going to be a great team again. He was always committed to the fullback position. That's something we haven't had for, I think, 3 or 4 years in Cleveland. As soon as he can, he gets a great fullback. And then also, of course, the tight end, Austin Hooper. I think that just frees up the game so much for an OBJ, for Jarvis Landry. People forget, they both had over 1,000 yards receiving last year.
Yeah.
Again, we find out that OBJ says that he was playing injured for most of the season. I certainly hope that's the case because he had a very lackluster season as well. But again, you get that right tackle there, Jack Conklin from Tennessee. He's a beast. He's a West Michigan native like myself. So, he's repping the brand. But I will say, that was a position, our entire offensive line, ever since Joe Thomas left, it has been in shambles. And then you put Baker Mayfield in there, and he's, like, struggling. Like, I don't know if you watched any of the games last year, but he was just always under pressure, always feeling rushed. And I think if you give him a couple more seconds to go through his reads, it's going to open up more on the field. So I think this season, if Browns fans were really excited going into last season, I think they should be more excited going into this one because there's less hype, there's less attention. They've had a year to kind of figure out some of these problems and to kind of address some of those things. They lost the dirtbag coach that we had. I like Stefanski a lot more. And I think Barry is going to be a much better GM. He's back in Cleveland. I can't remember exactly. I think he was a VP of player personnel before under some past regime. But I really think that things are lining up well right now for Baker Mayfield to have a great third season. Now, moving forward from that, if he just lays a giant stinker of a season on for 2020, I think he's gone. Because we're seeing this revolving door so quickly. These teams do not have
that's
the loyalty to their quarterbacks that they once had. We see Tom Brady leave New England. We see Jameis Winston and Cam Newton floundering now. Like, where are they going to end up? I hope Cam Newton doesn't end up a Steeler because I like Cam Newton. I hate the Steelers. And I think that move just makes too much sense. But I think, there's so many great quarterbacks coming out of college and everything, right? So
right.
I think I don't think he's necessarily cut, but I think that definitely opens the door for more possibility in questions in the quarterback I also like the Case Keenum signing. I think he's a great backup, veteran quarterback, can help Baker slow down.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you pretty much touched on every single player that we had listed on here. Let me ask you this, Justin:
Yeah.
Does Case Keenum start any games for the Browns in 2020?
I say yes, week 16. Oh, wait, we have a week 17 now, right?
Next year.
Okay, I say yeah. Okay, I always go into these feeling way too optimistic. I think last year I had them winning 11 games, and I was like, I had like solid argument for every single game. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna lose some of these, but if the Browns are in a great position in December, why not start Case Keenum when we play the Ravens for the last time? I feel like we always end the season with the Ravens or the Steelers, but
Yeah.
forget. I know you already talked about the divisional rival, but people forget last season the Browns destroyed the Ravens that first game. Literally, fans were leaving the stadium in Baltimore because the Browns were destroying them.
I love it. I love it. And a good answer, by the way, on the starting week 16. I was nervous when you said yes, but that's a good answer because you'll most likely have a playoff game clinched by then, right?
Hopefully. I mean, if week 16 is meaningful, then no, you put Baker in, of course. But if they've already clinched, honestly, and again, we don't have to go too much into like the divisional foes. I think the team to beat again is the Ravens.
Yeah, 100%.
Steelers gave us more of a hard time that second game, but there was so much emotion in that game. I went to the first game with the helmet incident from Myles Garrett.
No, you were there.
I was there. I hate the Steelers so much. We don't have many victories against them, but when we just destroyed them, and I didn't know the severity of the helmet incident in the stands. I was like,
yeah. First time.
Yeah, I didn't like see it, and then they didn't even like show it on the replay because they didn't want fans to go like berserk.
Oh yeah.
And I walk out of the stadium, I'm like, what? I missed that somehow. So again, I really don't think. I mean, the Bengals have not done much.
Yeah.
Whether or not they actually take Burrow with the first overall pick. I mean, if they have the first overall pick, they'll take him. But we're hearing a lot of rumors they might end up somehow in a trade with Miami or something. The Bengals, this year, they're still going to be basement. It'll be interesting to see how they put their pieces together. And I still think, I mean, the Steelers, that's our biggest rival. So, of course, they're going to give you their best game.
Yeah.
I hate to see the Browns have any success. So they're going to want to just push us into the dirt. But I really think that you probably take both games against the Steelers. If the Browns are in good position, you probably win both of those games. Not easily, but hopefully you win both of those games. You probably split the series with the Ravens.
That's good. That's good. I like that. I'm definitely I'm jealous of your setup right now. You got a much better setup than us.
We got the, so I'm a reporter at TV News. So literally we got like this. I just got the ring light today, so this is perfect time to do this.
Dang.
I got the TV with my big old Browns logo. So I could bring out. I literally have my signed Johnny Manziel jersey over here, so I could bring that up and make some fan cry. Because literally, I love that. Dude.
I feel like we're calling into Adam Schefter or something. Like got the whole setup behind him and everything. It's nice.
Right.
It's nice.
Yo, I have a question. This question isn't really relevant, but I'm just wondering. So, would you rather, going forward, have Joe Burrow at quarterback like the Bengals potentially will, or would you rather stick with Baker?
That's an interesting question. A lot of people jumped off the Baker Mayfield wagon like so quickly last season, and I was also at his very first game against the Jets, and I've seen the flashes of what he could be. Now, I haven't watched all of Joe Burrow's tape. I haven't watched him aside from maybe 3 games at LSU. So, like, definitely the hype is there for him, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think if you were to give me Joe Burrow right now or Baker Mayfield right now, I would still take Baker Mayfield, especially with the situation that we have built around him in Cleveland. Now, I might end up eating those words in a couple of months, like if Joe Burrow just lights it up. But I think right now I would still take I would still take Baker as the quarterback moving forward, especially
Okay.
with the pieces that they built around him. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
it's encouraging to see, if you are a Baker Mayfield fan, it's encouraging to see the way that they've built the team right now, because it just shows you that, hey, this is your team, at least for the next season or two, depending on contracts and everything. There's no reason, in my mind now, there's no reason for him not to go out there and just absolutely light it up.
Right. No, that's good. That's a good answer. I was just wondering because I'm from Ohio, so I have so many Browns and Bengals fans, and like as friends, and a lot of my Browns fans are like, "Oh, if I could take Joe Burrow now with our offense, I'd take him on A." And some of them are still on the Baker, but some of them are like, "I wish we could get Joe Burrow with like OBJ and all them." So I was just wondering. I'm like, let's see. I keep asking a bunch of fans that.
Homer, like I'm so loyal. Like I just want to have like I'm in on Baker Mayfield right now. I still want to give him a chance because we've had like revolving door. You guys have probably seen the picture of like
I know
the jersey, the jersey. Yes.
You know, all the different quarterbacks, everything we've had. Like I need a quarterback, please, Baker. Come on.
Listen, if they can make it to the playoffs with Derek Anderson, they can win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. Okay.
I know, right? I mean, if they do something like if they make the playoffs and Baker's the quarterback, they'll never have to buy a drink in Cleveland again. You probably never even have to buy dinner in Cleveland again. The fans are so starved for anything positive. Like it's insane.
No, for sure.
Justin, I got one more question for you, and then we'll let you go. And we'd love to have you back on at another point to talk Browns, maybe around the draft, because
talk about the AFC North.
Yeah. So we got Odell Beckham and you got Jarvis Landry. Is there any other wide receivers that we should keep our eye out for, or do you think they go ahead and draft a wide receiver to add some depth?
As far as on the roster goes, I don't think there's anyone on the roster that really like catches my eye right now.
Yeah.
People forget we still have David Njoku, another big tight end target. So
right.
You might see him split out and use like a double tight end set with Hooper and Njoku. They might use Njoku as trade bait. I really don't know at this point because he had some struggles with injuries last year.
Right.
But we still have Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Hooper,
yeah.
and Njoku, and Baker maybe. Like, you don't need another wide receiver.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope so bad, hand to God, that they just auto-draft an offensive tackle at number 10. Don't do anything stupid. No one wants this.
Works, yeah.
The position we need, another offensive tackle, and really shore up that offensive line. Because they were so bad last year. And I will say this, before you guys let me go. I think the Browns are doing what the Chiefs did in the past.
Yeah.
Build what they have now.
Yeah.
Offense. Our defense is still good, and we're gonna have Myles Garrett back, barring another crazy helmet incident.
Yeah.
That was so not his nature. As far as I mean, I have his autograph too, so I've met him at a training camp. He's like the most chill guy, especially if you watch Hard Knocks. He's just like a poet, and I'm like, where did this go? So I think, obviously, the Browns' strengths are going to be offense. So if we can this is the name of the game, right? Put more points on the board than the other team. Defense just helps stop the offense once or twice, and you win the game. And I really think that that's going to be the Browns' key to success, is kind of building off of that Kansas City model, just high-flying, high-scoring, chuck that ball down the field, and get Chubb his reps too, and Hunt for that matter.
Absolutely.
They're the double-headed monster. I mean,
absolutely.
I keep looking back at that Ravens game where Chubb just went off and sent those dirty bird Ravens fans home crying.
Yeah. My biggest issue with Freddie Kitchens, it doesn't look like it. If you look at the numbers of Nick Chubb, it doesn't look like it, but he was underused. Totally underused. There were so many games. The Rams game where I'm like, why? They just don't use him at all.
Yeah.
In situations where the Browns could have won so many more games if they just kept giving Chubb the ball. The dude is a stud, man. He's literally one of the most underrated backs in the NFL.
Yeah.
Freddie Kitchens would be ashamed because he was the reason that Nick Chubb wasn't the rushing leader last season. I'll die on that hill. Derrick Henry, I keep talking trash against the Titans right now. I'm not trying to. But Derrick Henry Can't take that away from him. He's a beast. He's a stud, King Henry, right?
Yeah.
But Nick Chubb was the rushing leader last year. Like, don't be fooled. It's just subpar coaching that took that away from him. Give him his touches, and he would have had that.
I like that. You heard it here first. Nick Chubb should have been the Russian leader.
Just another salty Browns fan.
Yeah. Well, Justin, we appreciate you coming on the podcast, and it's no doubt that you are a true Cleveland Browns fan, which we appreciate because they're hard to come by. But I know from personal experience.
Down in Northeast Ohio. Trust me.
There's more of us now.
That's true.
There's so many.
That's true. But I know from the years that we've spent together that you love the Browns. So thanks for hopping on, man.
Hey, great to see you, Noah. Nice to meet you, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to have you back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, later, Justin.
All right, take it easy, guys. Go Browns.
Go Browns. Alrighty, so there we go, a Browns fan. I'm going to get you back on here, Anthony.
I think I am. Or maybe not on your side.
There we go. All right, so so Justin obviously knows his stuff with the Cleveland Browns, and like we talked about, Baker Mayfield should have a better 2020 season, along with Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry. They both were beat up last year, and the addition of Austin Hooper. So let's wrap up the AFC North. I got that right, thank the Lord. And let's talk about, Anthony, our picks for this division. I'm gonna go Baltimore Ravens as the number one. How about are you in agreement with that? Are we in consensus?
Yeah, it's not like a crazy consensus, but I'll go Ravens.
Okay. How about number two?
Browns. Browns for me.
Browns.
Yeah. I think the Browns are going to get a wild card.
Okay. I'm gonna go Steelers number two. And I'll put Browns 3.
Yeah, Steelers.
Yeah.
3.
Bengals at the bottom. Yeah, I think we know what the Ravens are, and we know that the defense is solid. They made some great offseason moves. They have draft picks to continue to build around Lamar Jackson and the offense, and I don't think that there's any. I think it'll be a closer division battle, but I think in the end the Ravens edge it out just with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, it's tough for me. I feel like it's just going to be whoever. I think it's just going to be whoever does better in the divisional games. Those 6 games are so important.
Yeah.
So, and like he said, the Browns play the Ravens tough. So if the Browns can, I don't think they're going to sweep the Steelers, like Justin does.
Yeah.
But I would assume they'll sweep the Bengals.
Yeah.
And then I think if they split with the Ravens and Steelers, that puts them in a position. But it's possible that the Ravens sweep the Steelers, though. So
yeah.
In my head, that's where I think I'm kind of like, So.
Yeah, I think my hope is in the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. What they did the second half of the season, they were terrific and amazing. The trade to get Minka Fitzpatrick, and I think that we'll see what the offense does, but I think it'll definitely be interesting to see now that they don't have that first round draft pick. The Dolphins have it. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with that second round pick. So and I think the rest that we can agree with that the Bengals will bring up the bottom.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a horrible bottom like last year, though.
Right.
I think 4 or 5 wins, maybe a little bit more. It just depends. It just depends if they do. Until I know 100%, for some reason they keep coming out with these reports that they're not going to take Joe Burrow, that they're going to make the trade, which is just, I'm like, okay, if they're going to make a trade and get 4 first-round picks, then absolutely, I'm all for it.
Right. Yeah.
Because they'll get 4. That's 4 starting players that you can get in 1 year.
Yeah.
So they can address a lot of needs. But if they do have Joe Burrow is going to compete and help them. They're not going to win a lot of games. games, but he's going to keep them in.
Yeah, he helps for sure.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so that is the AFC North, and for those still watching or still listening to the podcast, we got a little bit, still got a little bit more to go. We got about 15 minutes left, so we have our consensus. Well, actually not consensus, but Anthony's top 10 rookies and my top 10 rookies from an offensive perspective. So obviously Chase Young's not going to be in there, but let me pull those up for you, Anthony, so that you can see your top 10 if you forgot them.
Heard these are way different.
They are way different. All right, let me get this moved over. Okay, so here you see these.
Yes.
All right, so Anthony's top 10. Let me pull up mine. Let me see where I put them. Oh, here we go. Here we go. You should see that in a second.
Okay, there we are.
Got him. Sorry, our faces are kind of smushed in the middle for those watching, but yeah, so I asked Anthony to send me his top 10 rookies. And Anthony, was this from a just like an NFL draft perspective, or was this from like a fantasy perspective? I can't really remember. What'd you say?
Sorry, my thing keeps messing up. There we go. This is just I don't know. What was your question?
Was this? I couldn't remember if this was like just overall NFL draft prospect like rankings, or was this like our fantasy projected rankings before the NFL draft?
So what I did was, this is how I think they will go in order of like fantasy wise.
Yeah.
But actually no, I don't remember, man. This was a while ago, a couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
Trying to remember. It might just be top 10 overall offensive talent. Because honestly, I'm gonna be honest. I think Joe Burrow is gonna win Rookie of the Year, so that would put him at number 1.
Yeah.
But I think this is more of like, hey, if I'm drafting rookies in a fantasy, if this is a rookie draft, this is how I'm going. This is my top 10.
Yeah. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
So, well, we do have the first. They're not the same, but our 1 and 2 are similar. You have Judy at number 1, and you have CeeDee Lamb at number 2. What do you like about Judy over CeeDee Lamb?
I'm gonna be honest, nothing anymore. The last weeks I've fallen so much in love with CeeDee Lamb that I should have texted you and changed this, but just for sake of this, I'll stick with Judy. I would say Judy just has a lot of Amari Cooper and Julio Jones mix.
Yeah.
To me. He's got the speed of Amari Cooper and the like legit route running, just amazing. So crisp and gets open so easy. I love it. Just like Amari Cooper, he's going to run a quick slant real quick, and you're not going to defend it.
Right.
And then he can hit you with a little double move, and he's going to beat you deep because he's so quick. So I like Jerry Jeudy just because of his speed and just how pure of a route runner he is.
Yeah.
And not that CeeDee Lamb doesn't have that, but I'm going to be honest, in the Big 12, it don't matter. It doesn't matter. They don't play defense in the Big 12. You can look like a stud. Jerry Judy's doing it against DBU, Florida, and LSU, even though State has more DBs drafted than both of y'all. Just saying. But Jerry Judy's doing it against SEC defenses every week, where those secondary players on every team will get drafted. Nobody in the Big 12 secondaries will get drafted.
Yeah.
First round, second round. So.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's great. Great point. I think on my end for CeeDee Lamb, I think if you look at what he's done over the course of his career, I think it's no question that he is going to be a productive wide receiver. And I mean, when I look at his tape, for me, the tape is like the tell-all. Just some of the moves after the catch that he does to literally. I mean, I know that they don't play defense in the Big 12, but he makes some of these guys look like they've never played football before. And specifically against Texas, there's a play where he literally makes 3 guys collide, and just when I see that, I see his hands, his his first step in the burst that he has. I think that I mean, it's very close, him and Judy, but
Oh yeah.
I think he's going to get a great landing spot and be a great NFL wide receiver. I mean, he's got the athleticism, but he also just has great hands, and is a touchdown scorer, no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah. So I gave like an Amari Cooper Julio type of comparison to Judy. Just is there anybody in the NFL that you look at CeeDee Lamb, you kind of resemble? Because I have somebody, but I want to see if you're like on the same page as me, or if you're thinking about it.
That's a good question. Um, Let me. I have a player in mind. He reminds me a lot of Keenan Allen.
Oh,
To be
that's
honest.
exactly who I had.
No way.
I swear.
Yeah.
That's exactly who I had. Yeah.
I was trying to remember. I'm like, wait, like I know. I'm trying to picture the team logo, and then it popped in my head. Yeah, Keenan Allen, like
Yeah.
a guy that I mean, he doesn't have blazing speed, but he's quick and he's fast. He's an excellent route runner, and the way that they used him in Oklahoma, they love to just get him the ball and let him do something with it, and that's what you see Keenan Allen do all the time is those those quick routes, 10 15 yard ins and outs, and then get him the ball and let him make a move. I think he's going to be a great like PPR type wide receiver where any kind of touchdown is just going to be a bonus, but he's going to be getting a ton of receptions.
That's funny. Yeah.
We think alike.
Yeah. This is crazy. All right, the Wisconsin fan, the Ohio State fan. What is going on here?
I
That's,
I honestly think that J.K. Dobbins is going to be the best back of the class, and I love Jonathan Taylor. I mean, I have him. It was really hard, but I have him right after Dobbins. But
Yeah.
when I look, I mean, Anthony unfortunately had to send me a tweet yesterday of Dobbins stiff arming Wisconsin twice on the same play, and yeah, I think when you look at the schedule that Ohio State played, and just what Dobbins was able to do at each level, I think he scored like 23 touchdowns in 2019. He has power, he has great hands, and he played in a great NFL type offense. And I think that he acclimates the best over Swift and over Jonathan Taylor. So, as much as I hate to say it, I think that in just my personal rankings, I think that Dobbins has the most successful NFL career of the top three running backs.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I bet you do.
I love that. Yeah. I just don't know with Dobbins yet, just because the Ohio State offense was so designed around him, and I don't know how it'll be if he is an NFL offense that isn't really designed to him.
Right.
But I'm sure he can adapt, absolutely. But I mean, he was fortunate he had Ryan Day for all 3 years, so he was in the same offense, and he knew that like he was going to be the main guy from day one. He was the main guy because Mike Weber was struggling with injuries his freshman year.
Yeah.
He took over. I mean, I love that. I love the talent. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them.
Yeah.
And I just Jonathan Taylor just, dude, man, the thing that I love about Jonathan Taylor that Dobbins doesn't have is Jonathan Taylor can hit a hole, which Dobbins can, but then Jonathan Taylor can take it 70 yards.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Really shown that, Taylor has the speed to like he's gone.
Yeah.
And Dobbins, I mean, if you see the Clemson game, yes, he did once, and then he had another chance later, and he got chased down by some linebacker.
Probably Isaiah Simmons.
Remember, all of us. No, it wasn't Isaiah Simmons. It was the white guy. I can't remember his name. And we're like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And we ended up, I think, settling for a field goal because he couldn't take it an extra 5 to 10 yards and score.
Yeah.
And we saw that throughout Dobbins' entire career.
Yeah.
Where he would break one off for 30 yards, but he couldn't get 40 yards to get a touchdown. So I like Jonathan Taylor's just finishing ability.
Yeah, that's great. I know. I think more speed than anyone thought. Running the 4.39. I think I was expecting somewhere in the 4.42, 4.3, or sorry, not 4.4. 4.2 to 4.3. Um, and he came in impressed with the 4.3, and I mean you can't deny speed. I think I was sick of every single Wisconsin game they show a highlight of him in like high school winning the state championship in New Jersey, and I'm like, okay, that's track speed, but like what's his football speed? And at times I was like, oh, I know he's fast, but he didn't look that fast. But I think in the combine, he just his quickness and really showed his true speed. So I totally understand you having him there at number 3, and I think he's gonna hopefully be the best Wisconsin tailback in the NFL yet.
He reminds me a lot of Todd Gurley, man. And I know that's high comparison, but he does. When I watch him, I'm like, he looks like Todd Gurley did at Georgia.
Yeah.
To me, because he has the power, he has the agility, and he has the speed to run away.
Yeah.
And honestly, the only bad game Jonathan Taylor had in his career was against Ohio State. And honestly, that's how Melvin Gordon was.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
Sometimes you just run into Ohio State defenses
right.
with these Wisconsin backs, and that just happens.
Yeah.
And that's no fault to them. That's a fault to Hornibrook or whoever you guys had. I can't remember who. I can't remember right now.
Jack Cohn.
Yes, Cohn. And that was just on him. So
yeah.
I really like Jonathan Taylor a lot.
Yeah.
I bet you like Dobbins a lot too.
Yeah.
I mean, I would if I were you. He ran for like 300 yards in the 2 games against you guys. So.
Yeah, I know. And we had a good defense too. So I mean, he's no slouch.
So
he's no slouch. Yeah. Okay. So that's I got 1, 2, 3, 4 that we've talked about. Talk about. I don't have him on my list yet in the top 5, but DeAndre Swift, who I think at the beginning of the year was definitely the number 1 back.
Yeah, he was.
Rated, and now he's he's in the mix of the 3, but you have him above Dobbins, but after Taylor. So what do you like about him? What don't you like?
I just like his. I don't know. He just seemed, when I watched him at Georgia, he played with Chubb, behind Chubb.
Yeah.
He just looks like an NFL back.
Yeah.
I don't know what there is much to like about him. I mean, other than he just looks like a pro. He looked like a pro playing in college. So I just like that about him. So I feel like he's just going to step right into wherever he goes and just be ready to play, and have an immediate impact. Whether he's going to be a starting running back, probably not, depending on fit. But he's definitely going to come in and be ready to go. I just like him. And I remember at the start of the college year when me and you were talking about, the next draft, you always mentioned him. And I was like, nah, dude, whatever. I'd rather have Dobbins. I'd rather have Taylor. I'd rather have ETN, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm kind of after the year has gone by, I'm like, he didn't have the greatest year at Georgia.
Yeah.
But Georgia's offense was so bad.
Yeah. He didn't have to.
So
I remember watching him in the in 2018 at the end of the year in the college football playoff and
yes.
Being like, okay, this guy is going to be an absolute beast.
Exactly.
And I
don't think it's a fault on him.
Yeah, no.
It's just Georgia last year. They're just built for defense.
Yeah.
They're like the Alabamas, 10 years ago when Alabama was Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, no pass game, just run
Yeah.
defense. That's how Georgia has been built the last couple of years with Kirby Smart.
Yep.
So I just expect them to come in and be legit.
Yeah, any of the top 3 running backs, I don't think there's nothing that's wrong with any of the 3, in my opinion. I think they're all going to be. I hope they all get great landing spots because I want to see each of them succeed. Because I mean, it's rare that you get 3 amazing running backs like this. All that will probably get once one goes. I'm gonna suspect that the other 2 are gonna go fairly quickly. So. So then you got Joe Burrow next as your 5th best prospect. We've talked a lot about him, but what makes you put him number 5 over some of the other, the Ruggs, the Mims, Rager?
I'm going to be honest. I'm not really high on those guys.
Yeah.
Everyone else. Joe Burrow, just to me, I mean, he's been in college for, 5 or 6 years. He's been around. So he's definitely a veteran already. And he's just, the dude is so smart football-wise.
Yeah.
And super accurate. So doesn't matter where he's at. He's going to have NFL wide receivers that are going to be able to get open, and he's just going to be accurate and be able to put the ball there. So I love Joe Burrow, and I mean, if we're I mean, if we're being honest, if it wasn't going to be the Bengals, I'd probably have him a little higher. But I don't know. The dude is. I doubted him a lot last year. I'd be like, all right, at some point he's going to come down, and every week it was better and better. And then he has an 8 touchdown game in college football.
Yeah.
I'm done doubting him, man. I loved him at Ohio State, and I love him at LSU now. He's just legit.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Like, you can't deny what he is. So.
Yeah. Okay. And I know you have this player in your next top 10 as well, but Cam Akers, running back for Florida State.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, don't skip Cam Akers.
Oh.
I was like, you have Cam Akers there. I was making sure. Okay.
I think I think this is probably one of the most underrated running backs. I mean, you have the top 3, and I think Akers is getting attention, but definitely not being as talked about. I think if you asked people who's your top college prospects, I don't think that Cam Akers would be one of the first names on your list, just solely because I think of the team that he played for in 2019 with Florida State. But when you look at the numbers, the stats, and I don't have them in front of me, but if you look at the Florida State record versus Cam Akers' stats over the last couple of years, I mean, it's mind-blowingly productive and consistent, and what he brings to the table as far as yards after first touch, and or I guess it would be yards after contact. He's really, really shifty, a hard guy to tackle, and a great pass catcher as well. So for me, I have him over Swift just because I think he's a better pass catcher than DeAndre Swift, and I think that he's going to fit great. I don't think that he'll get a clear running back one role, but I think at some point in 2020 with an NFL team, he will take over the backfield, and he's going to be he reminds me a lot of like a Miles Sanders, minus the pure speed of Miles Sanders, but just a really versatile back who can come out of the backfield and catch passes as well. So,
I mean, his career, he averaged. Never mind. That's receiving. I was gonna say he averaged 7 yards carry for his career. That was receptions. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I mean, he averaged around 5 yards a carry in his career, which it's not the greatest, but it's still productive.
Yeah.
Especially for how bad Florida State has been, like you said. But yeah, I like him. He's definitely very good and out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Making plays. He's not a Dalvin Cook, but I mean, he's right behind Dalvin Cook as Florida State running backs go. Potentially a work done type.
Yes, like that.
Yeah, so I like Cam Akers. I don't have him as high as you, but he's definitely. I mean, you have him as your third running back. I have him as my fourth running back. So
right.
I mean, we're definitely. I just have a couple of receivers in front of him, but yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. Okay, so will be the 6 through 10. So we talked a little bit about Dobbins, why you like him. We talked about Swift. Let's talk about. So you have Justin Jefferson at 7, and I have T. Higgins at 7. So what do you like? And then you have Higgins after. So what do you like about Justin Jefferson? Sell me on him, and then I'll sell you on T. Higgins.
Dude, I love Justin Jefferson. I honestly wanted to put him up in the top 4. I did. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the LSU swag. I just love LSU receivers.
They do have swag, that's for sure.
I just love LSU receivers, and I mean, I watch this dude go like this to Oklahoma. Every touchdown.
Yeah.
This man just had 4 touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah.
And then he went off against Clemson as well. And he went off against Bama. I mean, when he plays elite, not Oklahoma, they're not elite defensive. But when he plays elite defensive backs, he shows out. He balls out. He's a gamer. And I love it. I mean, he super reminds me of Jarvis Landry. Maybe not the same flashy catch radius, but the dude is reliable. I mean, the dude had 15 touchdowns, I think, maybe a little less. But I mean, he's just a stud.
Yeah.
And there's nothing about him that I don't like. And I love his mindset, his attitude. He's not cocky, he's confident.
Yeah.
Difference. And this dude's like, you're not going to guard me. I'm going to make this play.
Yeah.
about him. And I hate that he's predicted to go to the Eagles because
I
I
hope
hate
not.
the Eagles. And if he goes to the Eagles, I'm gonna dread watching him. But I hope he has success.
Yeah, I really hope he goes to the